Yeah, I thought we would be stronger than we were today. We'd have to do some work overnight to try and figure out.
Lando Norris crossed the line with a 1:27.869, took the first non-Mercedes pole of the entire 2026 season, and McLaren's garage erupted. Then the FIA summoned him to the stewards' room. These are 5 drivers and teams who either arrived in Miami with momentum, left with penalties, or watched everything they built this season unravel under a single session's pressure. And the actual sprint race hasn't even started yet. Mercedes walked into Miami having won every qualifying session and every race of the 2026 season. 3 events, 0 defeats. Then Norris ended that streak in 1 lap, and instead of celebrating, spent the next 2 hours sitting in front of stewards waiting to find out if he'd keep his pole position. Ferrari's best driver topped practice and got a fine before competitive running even began. Hamilton had the pace to challenge for the front row and left it at turn 17.
I feel very good. I'm very happy for the team, of course. It's always, a lot of expectations. A lot of work's gone into trying to bring these upgrades, and it's always just difficult to anticipate or to know what to expect coming into a new weekend. But since lap 1, literally.
Albon made it into SQ2 on a lap the FIA shouldn't have counted, and Russell stood in front of the cameras and admitted that the team that had won everything this year had just been genuinely surprised by how far behind they'd fallen. Leclerc topped FP1 with a 1:29.310, roughly 0.3 seconds faster than Max Verstappen, and about 0.45 seconds clear of Oscar Piastri. And Ferrari's garage had every reason to feel confident heading into sprint qualifying. The car was fast, the pace was real. And then the stewards released their first document of the weekend. During that same FP1 session, Leclerc had driven through the pit lane at 81.4 kilometers per hour, where the limit was set at exactly 80, 1.4 kilometers per hour over the line. The FIA's ruling came back clean and direct. Scuderia Ferrari HP received a fine of €200, with no sporting penalty applied to Leclerc himself. Now, €200 in Formula One terms is almost a rounding error. Teams spend millions every single weekend, so this fine barely registers on any balance sheet. But the pattern it reinforces is what matters.
Pretty surprising how big a jump McLaren and Ferrari have made, so that's pretty damn impressive. We knew they'd probably close the gap, but they've been quicker than us. My side have been struggling today.
Ferrari arrived in Miami with arguably their strongest car of the 2026 season. Their driver had just gone fastest in practice, and before a single competitive lap was turned, the stewards had already knocked on their door. And that fine turned out to be a preview of the whole session, because by the time sprint qualifying ended, Leclerc had been beaten to pole by Lando Norris. Hamilton had fallen to 7th after losing his lap at turn 17, and Ferrari's execution had once again failed to keep pace with their raw speed. The fine was small, the pattern behind it was not. Miami and Lando Norris have a complicated history, and it starts 1 year before this weekend even happened. At the 2025 Miami Grand Prix, McLaren sent Norris out of the garage during opening practice with tools still sitting inside his cockpit. Not one tool rattling around, multiple items, including a spanner and an LED torch, were left inside the car as he drove down the pit lane. Norris came straight on the radio and told his engineers, "You've left so many tools in the cockpit, everything is just falling apart, I have to box this lap." He returned immediately, removed the items himself, placed them on the car bodywork, and headed back out. The FIA opened an investigation into McLaren for releasing a car in an unsafe condition. Miami had already made its mark on McLaren before a competitive lap was turned. Fast forward to 2026, and Norris arrived at the same circuit with a heavily upgraded McLaren and delivered the fastest lap of sprint qualifying. A 1:27.869, the first non-Mercedes pole of the entire season, 0.222 seconds clear of Kimi Antonelli in second.
It's been very difficult since this morning. We're seeing something it's not quite working on my side, and I'm having a lot of wheel spin, and unfortunately we didn't really have enough time to get to the bottom of it, but hasn't felt good.
And that's when Miami came for him again. Within minutes of the session ending, the FIA summoned Norris to see the stewards at 5:54 p.m. local time, citing an investigation into driving unnecessarily slowly during qualifying. The allegation was that Car 1 had failed to stay below the required time limit set by the race director's competition notes. Norris had just taken the most important pole of the 2026 season, and now he sat in a room with stewards while his team waited to find out if they'd keep it. The investigation ran for nearly 2 hours. At 7:50 p.m. local time, the stewards released their verdict, and it read in McLaren's favor. Their reasoning was precise. Norris had stayed within the approved delta time for almost the entire lap until just before turn 17, where car 27 suddenly passed him and forced him to react and create a gap before his push lap. The stewards ruled this an extenuating circumstance, determined he had not driven unnecessarily slowly, and confirmed no further action. Norris kept the pole. 2 investigations at the same circuit across 2 consecutive years, and both times McLaren walked away without a sporting penalty. But the pattern Miami keeps setting for this team, chaos first, redemption second, makes you wonder how long that luck holds. Look guys, I am a huge fan of Lewis and Max, if you've seen my last video. So when I tell you that watching Hamilton's SQ3 lap unravel at turn 17 genuinely stung, I mean that. This is not a hit piece. This is just me trying to make sense of something that honestly doesn't fully add up. Because the pace was there. Throughout FP1 and the earlier rounds of sprint qualifying, Hamilton was broadly matching Leclerc. Both Ferraris were moving through the field together, the upgrades were clearly working, and everything pointed toward a strong Saturday for Lewis. And then SQ3 happened. Something went wrong in the final corner complex at turn 17, and by the end of the session he was sitting half a second slower than his own teammate. Same car, same tires, same circuit, 3 positions apart on the grid. Ferrari's official analysis does give technical reasons. Rear-end instability, imperfect tire preparation, a small steering correction that cost him time in the final sector. And maybe that explains all of it. Maybe it was purely the car underneath him at that specific moment. But watching it from the outside, it looked like a driver carrying a lot of weight on his shoulders. Lewis has been his own harshest critic since joining Ferrari, and the analysis itself notes he was particularly self-critical after this session, pointing straight to that corner as the moment his lap fell apart. Honestly, I think it might be both. The technical issue was real, but I also think Lewis puts enormous pressure on himself at Ferrari, more than perhaps any other driver on the grid right now, and sometimes those 2 things feed each other in the worst possible way. Whether that is fair or not, Leclerc in 4th and Hamilton in 7th is a gap that goes beyond 1 sprint qualifying session. That half second between 2 drivers in identical machinery is a conversation Ferrari are going to have this season, and Miami might be the moment it starts getting louder. While Hamilton was processing his SQ3 mistake and Russell was adjusting his expectations about Mercedes' upgrade pace, a separate crisis was developing in the Racing Bulls garage that most people missed entirely until after the session had already finished. During SQ1, Alex Albon drove over the curbs at turn 6 and exceeded track limits. Clearly and visibly, the kind of offense the FIA's automated monitoring system was built specifically to catch in real time. Except it didn't catch it. The same system that logged track limits violations from multiple other drivers in that same session somehow let Albon's breach go unregistered, and he progressed into SQ2 as P16, while Liam Lawson sat at P17 and was knocked out of qualifying entirely. Racing Bulls reviewed the onboard footage themselves, spotted the breach, and raised it directly with the FIA after SQ2 had already begun. The stewards investigated, confirmed the offense was real, and deleted both Albon's best SQ1 lap and all of his SQ2 times, dropping him from P14 all the way to P19 on the sprint grid. As a result, Carlos Sainz, Arvid Lindblad, Liam Lawson, Esteban Ocon, and Sergio Perez each moved up 1 position. Now, the stewards didn't just make that call from scratch. There is an established FIA precedent for exactly this kind of situation, where a track limits breach is discovered after a session has moved on, and the stewards applied that same procedure here to determine how Albon's times should be handled. The system had failed to flag it in real time, so the precedent dictated how to correct it after the fact. Lawson's reaction captured exactly what the Racing Bulls garage was feeling. Alex did track limits, but I think they realized too late. Honestly, I can't understand how that's possible. And that last line is the real issue. Not Albon's mistake. Drivers push track limits every weekend. The issue is that a rival team had to do the FIA's job for them, flagging a breach that the automated system was supposed to catch automatically. Albon lost his grid position, Lawson got his back, and a very uncomfortable question about FIA monitoring reliability went into Saturday evening without a proper answer. Going into Miami, Mercedes had taken every pole and won every race of the 2026 season across 3 rounds without a single defeat. A 5-week gap after Japan, created when Bahrain and Saudi Arabia were cancelled, gave every rival team time to arrive with serious upgrade packages. McLaren brought substantial changes across the floor, bodywork, braking, and rear wing. Ferrari brought upgrades. Red Bull brought upgrades. Mercedes, by contrast, held their larger package back, reportedly saving it for Canada, arriving with only a handful of new parts. That decision showed up immediately in the results. Norris delivered a 1:27.869 in SQ3, the first non-Mercedes pole of the entire season, with Antonelli 0.222 seconds behind and the rest of the field trailing further back. And when Russell was asked about it afterwards, he didn't try to spin it. He admitted he was surprised, not by the fact that rivals had closed the gap, but by how visibly it had shown up in a single session, in a car that had won everything up to that point in 2026. The gap was 0.222 seconds to second place. In modern Formula One qualifying, that's not close. Russell finished 6th, behind both McLarens, both Ferraris and Verstappen, and his reaction told the story better than any lap time could. Mercedes had understood the upgrade deficit was coming, but hadn't expected Miami to make it look quite this stark. Before a single sprint race lap was completed at the 2026 Miami Grand Prix, Ferrari had been fined for Leclerc driving 1.4 km/h too fast through the pit lane. Hamilton had thrown away 3 grid positions with a mistake. At turn 17 in the final corner of SQ3, Russell had stood in front of cameras and admitted that the team who had won everything this season had genuinely been caught off guard. Norris had taken pole and then spent 2 hours in a steward's room waiting to find out if he'd keep it, and the FIA's own automated system had missed a track limits breach that a rival team had to flag themselves, reshuffling 5 drivers on the sprint grid. The fine was €200. The mistake cost half a second. The investigation lasted nearly 2 hours and ended with no further action. The missed breach moved 5 drivers, and the streak that had defined the entire 2026 season ended with a 1:27.869 from a man who wasn't even sure he'd be keeping that lap time when he first crossed the line. Miami did all of this before the racing even started, and if you have been watching Formula One long enough, you already know that when a Friday feels this chaotic, Saturday has a way of making it look calm by comparison. If this is the kind of F1 content you want more, like and subscribe Formula Girls. That is all for today, guys. See you in next one.